Look, we're live.
We are.
Beautiful. Hey, hello, everybody. Welcome to UGA Sports Live. My name is Roddy Nabulsi. I am joined by Dane Young. I know you don't recognize him there in the glasses. And then the other guy with glasses there, Jake Roos, the recruiting guy. I know it's like a disguise. Everyone's trying to be like me. And then, of course, the only guy who can see worth a damn is Jim Donnan. Jim Donnan has returned. He's joining us from his house. I'm here at Classic City Eats on Baxter. Jake is in front of the Dreamcatcher, and Dane is actually at UGA Sports Secret Bunker. You can see the wallpaper there. So everyone is back for this week's show. And we thought it was fitting because the players are back. All the Georgia freshmen are in town. Transfers are in town. The players are back because it's voluntary workout time. The players can come back and do their voluntary workouts, which is a big deal because they're able actually to be on campus. And, you know, some of these guys, when they went home, they didn't exactly have a great, not everyone has a great workout facility in their garage. You know, they didn't have access to the gyms that they would like. And, you know, Georgia has a multi-million-dollar weight room that players would like to use at their discretion. Now, so they're back, and Georgia put out, like, Georgia can't show any of that stuff, but they put a little video of the guys picking up their shoes and putting on the mask and washing their hands, and the tagline stays 6 feet apart. So the players are coming back. The players are, as far as we know, abiding by all the rules and regulations. And so we got football back, which means, of course, we have to bring back Jim Donnan, the guru of Georgia football, Hall of Famer. And Coach, we're glad to have you back.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back. I certainly enjoyed doing the podcast with Dane there. I think we hit some good subjects there over the few weeks, and hope we can do a few more of those. Everybody's been checking in with me about my wife and everything, and she's had some good results lately. Some new treatment she's on. Definitely not out of the woods, but a lot better. So got the need to talk some Georgia ball. So glad you guys brought me back on here. And, I feel like I'm like MacArthur. I shall return. I'm back, man. So let's go for it.
It's good to have you back, Coach. It's good to have you back, no doubt.
Oh, you guys did a great job without the old coach, that's for sure.
Please, those are the worst shows all of the year. Those are terrible, especially the ones with Jake in them. But now that he can see, now that he can actually see what he's doing, maybe we'll get some good stuff there. But, you know, I missed all the fun last week when Jake dropped the news. I was on vacation. Of course, let's go back. So Roddy goes on vacation, 5 commits, if you include JT Daniels.
Uh-huh.
So one for basketball.
Chaz Chambliss, Dylan Fairchild, Marquise Groves Killebrew for 2022, JT Daniels, and then the basketball kid whose name escapes me.
Well, you see how much basketball recruiting you do at UGA Sports. But no, it's good. And you guys got to talk about JT Daniels. And now here's the thing. I'm on vacation. I'm hoping things run well, but they always work better when I'm not around. And Jake drops a national story on everybody. And first things first, I got to give him props for blowing everybody out of the water with that Roos bomb that JT Daniels, 5-star, number 4 player in the nation, is transferred to Georgia. So I'm walking on the beach, checking my text and checking our group chat, and all of a sudden it's like, holy crap, what? Jake's got this huge news. And I turned to my wife. She's like, what? You know, she gets suspicious. Like, are you about to go back to work? You have to do something. I'm like, nope. It couldn't be better. I mean, we got a huge scoop. And but Coach, I want the whole purpose of bringing this up is not so much to give Jake a pat on the back, which he well deserves. I do want to get your take on the JT Daniels thing, because you're a quarterback. You've coached quarterbacks. You've got a great coaching tree. You've got guys that you've put into the Hall of Fame. Tell me about this JT Daniels kid. What do you think when you watch his film?
Okay, first of all, I would like to mention too, Jake, that was just out of the blue there, just tremendous scoop that, everybody found out about it later and took credit for it, but Jake was the man. And that's one of the reasons everybody needs to subscribe to UGA Sports, because he's always got stuff that everybody else copies. But I found that out over the last couple of years watching him work. He's definitely 5-star reporter. But anyhow, As far as JT Daniels, as what happened and why and all that, I really haven't been privy to the reason for it. But based on anything that I could surmise, would be the fact that we do have a very much inexperienced room. After you look at the fact that Newman has certainly got a lot of experience, but none in our system, and then you add the fact that Dwan's been hurt, and I've heard that he's really made a good comeback, and he looks real good, and he's ready to go. Beck, from what I saw, has got a ways to go, as any freshman would have. But and then we like the fact that Bennett's got some ability, but still has not proven it against the better competition. He's done well against our defense. So anytime you can supplant your team and help them with a good player, that's been Kirby's MO since he's been there or been here. And I think just like the New York Life, this is an insurance policy. If the kid's eligible this year, that'd be great. There's been guys that had injuries that got eligible that because they had to sit out a year. So we'll have to see. But going into that Clemson game in 2021, it certainly gives you a guy that has been under duress, has played big time football, had some big games against Notre Dame and people like that. There's a concern about the knee injury. Anytime a quarterback has a knee situation and has to, wear a big brace, you lose a little bit of power there sometime, and stability. But from what I've heard too, they've checked all that out and feel good about that. He's going to be ready to, hopefully play this year. If not, for sure he would next year. So to me, it was just adding some dessert to the buffet line. To me, I just feel like it was a very smart move, a very coy move by Coach Smart, Coach Munkin, who knows what he wants. And the other thing that I would like to just put out there that kind of chaps my ass a little bit, everybody's got their opinion and everything, but I just want to say this about Georgia football as well. They got a new offensive coordinator. They hadn't had a chance for spring practice, and they can't get the system in. That's complete BS from that standpoint. What do you think these coaches were doing from January the 4th to March the 16th? They weren't sitting around playing tiddlywinks with manhole covers. They were out there working their ass off on this football team, using the rules to their advantage, walkthroughs, off-season program, off-season 7-on-7, installation, everything that a good football program does to take advantage of the rules. So by the time we were ready to start spring practice, we'd installed the offense. I hadn't been involved with it. I'd say UGA. But, the thing that bothers me is people concerned about it. Sure, they don't get the fact of 15 days of watching these kids practice and all that. But I can guarantee you one thing. Kirby, Munkin, all those guys left no stone unturned. And the beauty of the whole situation that this 3-month off type situation was an inordinate amount of mental testing, of mental preparation, of watching tape, of doing things where you weren't having to go on a timeline and go do something or go to a class, even though they did well in school. I thought that was tremendous that our academic support system got our football. Our kids did great. Guys like George Pickens at home, his mama on his ass all the time. He was going to make good grades. I promise you that. So one after another, that's all you hear about. But I'm kind of randomly talking about, please don't worry about us installing this offense, getting everything ready. And now, yesterday, I noticed where Roddy came out and told everybody that the NCAA is going to let us come on, start some systematic practice and walkthroughs on the 15th. Which will be huge, getting them to go there and the coaches working with them 8 hours a week. We won't be as ready as we would have been with spring practice, but let me tell you something. As long as our defense makes the trip, our defense right now looks like the defense that Kirby Smart used to coach at Alabama, and it did last year too, and several times. But if our front comes along, but our back end, our linebackers, defensive ends, safeties, corners, I mean, this is from my friend Nat, who's recuperating here. stronger than Aunt Mary's breath, our defense.
Yeah, I mean, I think people got to be feeling good about that aspect of it for sure, Coach. You talk about that and all the experience. I'm interested in your take too, since we haven't had a chance to talk about this on here, in what this was like. I guess what will coaches learn about how guys come back prepared from this? How will that kind of shape this season? And how much trust does it buy a kid to come back in better, or as good, if not better shape than when he left?
Well, that's one thing you're going to have to do, is have a little patience here as a coach. You got to understand that the difference in football nowadays and say 10 years ago is the regimen that these kids are under daily here, with the nutrition, with the weight training, with the academic testing, with academic profiles that they're under, and the tutoring. Just a really disciplined approach day in and day out, and they can't help but develop in all those fields. But now all of a sudden, except over being able to Zoom and talk to them daily, you really don't know exactly what as Roddy mentioned, what their ability to work out and where they could work out and who they could work out with. So we're probably going to lose a little bit as far as some of the strength gains, some of the size gains, some things like that you would normally have after these 3 months. But I think very quickly you're going to be able to reassume a lot of that mass, that strength that you lost with Coach Sinclair taking over, and then Collier Pernover working with them very hard on the nutrition angle. And from what I understand too, July the 1st, they can actually put them in the same place. Whenever that July the 6th or whenever they approve them to start being together, I think they can put them all in one area there, like over to Georgia Center, and then control all their food, everything they do, and really have a good maintenance on them. But the thing that worries me, and I'm sure it worries every coach, is you're going to have a really good workouts with them and all that, but what are these kids going to be doing when they're not at the facility, and who are they going to be around? And that the COVID situation worries you there. But as far as the kids being able to, and I'm talking a lot here because I hadn't talked in a long time, so I don't want to, but I do want to make sure that everybody understands that under Ron Course and his staff and Dr. Salyers and all these people, they've got a good plan. And Kirby understands the chain of command on that health issue, and he's working very readily with them. And, the parents have got to feel like that these kids are going to be in a more secure system working out under our people than they would just going down to a local place where you don't know who's running it. And that's why they entrusted their kids to Coach Smart to come here and sign with them. And they know that he'll do all he can to take care of them.
Completely fair.
No, and Coach, trust me, we don't mind you talking as much. We've missed you, and it's glad to have you on. Now, don't get me wrong, Dane and your podcast have been fantastic. I listen to it every week. We like having you here, though, just because I don't want to have to talk to Jake as much as possible. So I love having you on the show. Let me hit some of those dates for folks that may not be members of UGAsports.com, and I don't know why the hell you wouldn't be, but just say for some reason you're not. So on the 17th of this month in June, so about 8 days, the NCAA Division I Council is supposed to vote. And if they do, they are going to allow teams that play on Labor Day weekend to have mandatory workouts starting July 13th. So everything up until July 13th will be voluntary. Coaches can have 8 hours of meetings. Like you said, Coach, they can do all that cerebral stuff. They can do all the film, all the meetings, 8 hours a week while the kids are on campus taking advantage of the facilities. July 13th, they can say, okay, hey, mandatory workouts. You have to apply. We can have team meetings now. You are in the room. The coaches are up there, not practice, but they can have mandatory workouts. Starting on July 13th. Then on July 24th, 11 days later, the teams can start basically walkthroughs and meetings with the coaches where they can, do all that other stuff. So I'm sorry, they can do mandatory workouts on the 13th. On the 24th, they can have team meetings and walkthroughs. That's where you can line up your offense, line up your defense, and walk through plays and stuff. Again, you're just shorts and T-shirts, no helmets or shoulder pads or any of that stuff. But on the 24th of July, much earlier than we've ever seen before, they can actually start having basically the equivalent of walkthroughs. Then right after that, they can actually start fall camp. So we're going to see an extended fall camp. Okay, something that goes starting in July. You add the time you lost in spring camp, you get some additional time in July leading up to Labor Day weekend when all the teams practice. So
right.
It's,
and I'll just amplify that in the fact that if we were in here last summer, let's just pretend it's 2019, then kids would be in summer school and they could have 8 hours a week with them. 6 of them would be meeting time, and then 2 hours on the field where they could, do some like agility and things like that, but no football related, nothing with the football. But now they've added that, what you did, where they can maybe make up for that in July, where they can actually do the walkthroughs and do those things along with the physical workout. So that's a big plus for them. And the other thing that I think the NCAA was very lenient on is because of the stress that these kids have been on. And obviously you're here to be a student first. There's no question about that. But they've made it that you don't have to go take summer classes to receive room and board. So some of these kids, if they're pretty much up on their studies and don't need to take a class, they're not going to take a class just so they can get room and board. Now, I'm not sure what our percentage will be on that, but I do think, again, the NCAA is thinking about us a little bit by letting you provide that room and board. And instead of us starting a fall camp in August the 6th over where everybody's staying together and eating together and all, I think they can probably start that on July the 13th or whatever day you said.
No, yeah, July 13th would be the mandatory workouts, and the 24th would be the team meetings and walkthroughs. So they can get a lot of that stuff done.
And Anthony, the team meetings now, I think, are going to be a lot different as far as social distancing. And I've heard that they're considering maybe doing them in the indoor facility where they have a big kind of like when you have a coaches clinic, you could have a team meeting in there, and you got the big video board where you can show tape and all that. So we'll have to see about that. That's all out there for I know some teams are going to use tents for their meetings. They're going to have outdoor meetings and use tents.
Kind of like an old-fashioned revival day.
I have to go hide in the bushes for that one.
Yeah, you can be good. You can get over there on Baxter. Pick up a few there. He's going to hide in the bushes right now.
I do think Coach's point on classes, though, is a really important one, because you think about one of the reasons that Joe Burrow was LSU last year is that he was so far ahead in his classwork that he could really focus on football while also being a student athlete. So if some of these players use the spring and summer to kind of do that and be where they want to be academically, then maybe it's a lighter load in some cases. It won't always be, especially for younger guys, but it can be an advantage. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, and I think another point there, because we haven't had a chance to tell you everything we've learned here from my standpoint, because I don't get on these tweets and everything. But another thing the NCAA has done, which I think is really good, on these grad transfers. It used to be, the reason they had it in the first place supposedly was that you didn't have the graduate program, that university didn't have it, so you went to the other place to take that. And that's why some of these kids took some really way out courses that aren't, what the graduate degree. But now they're saying that you can go to another place and pursue another undergraduate degree as a graduate transfer. So that's going to help a lot as far as the pressure on a kid to take grad courses and all that. He can come in here and let's say you got 2 years left like Daniels has. He's not a graduate transfer, but let's just say he already completed 3 years of school. I think he has 3 years left, maybe. I don't know.
3 years.
I'm not sure. So the whole point is you don't have to necessarily be a grad student to be a grad transfer. Do you understand that?
So absolutely. That was a situation where we saw kids that couldn't, if you were going into the graduate program and your school had a graduate program in that particular area, you couldn't transfer. So if you went, say, from if you were at Georgia Tech and you want to transfer and get an engineering degree, they're like, no, we have graduate engineering degrees. You can't go to NC State and get an engineering degree from there. You wouldn't be eligible. But if you're going there to learn underwater basket weaving, then by all means, you can go there and take graduate level classes. And those graduate level classes are tough, and some of these guys are like, look, I've already busted my tail. I've got my undergraduate degree. I'd like to take a few more classes, maybe in a minor somewhere, but I don't want to always have to go in and start, getting classes towards a PhD or a master's that I'm not going to ultimately get. So I think it's a good thing. It's good looking out. Some of the stuff the NCAA has done has been very, very well thought out. Speaking of being well thought out, I'm going to get progressively less well thought out as I knock back this Academia beer. Got the IQ IPA. I want to give a big shout out to our friends at Academia because they have some big news. Okay. They have partnered with the Atlanta Beverage Company. So you're going to start seeing Academia beer in like all these different Krogers. You're going to see that distributorship put the Academia beer everywhere. So some folks who watch this and you're like, hey, I've gone to the store and I couldn't find Academia beer in my local beverage shop. That is going to change. You're going to start seeing those beverages, those Academia beers a lot more places. They might even be getting a new tank to make even more beer. So just a big shout out to our friends at Academia who also, and I got to point this out, they got 2 new beers. One of which is the Real Situation. The Real Situation is an amazing key lime pie flavored beer that tastes like a warm summer day. 4.8% alcohol. Perfect beer to sip all summer long. So if you're like me and you like the key lime pies, there's actually a key lime pie beer. And they also have Waiting Around. Waiting Around is a hazy double IPA with an 8.1 ABV. So 16 different types of hops. I figured that would be right up Jake's alley. Double IPA.
Sounds good to me.
8.1. Yeah, you'll need a third set of glasses. You'll be seeing 6 different things.
So there's a key lime pie beer, and it's not named after Roddy. I don't understand this.
They call it The Real Situation. I'm annoyed by that, but I'm gonna have to go out there and get some. It's a key lime pie beer liner. So I'm gonna hit them up. Also, while I'm talking about food and drinks, everyone's on the show from home. I'm actually at Classic City Eats, which is open. And I want to point out something to you guys while you're sitting at home and not having a good lunch. I'm having a good lunch. So I got the tender plates, the 3 tenders, just brought to me. I'm in the newly renovated place. Now, I know some folks are still scared to go out and eat. And I want to tell you something. Josh Collins over here at Classic City Eats, he has one of those foggers. They come in and they fog the place from the rafters to the floor every night. So it's like a medical suite in here. It's that clean. So it is as immaculate as possible. So if you've been hesitant to go out and eat somewhere, you're like, well, I know they're doing a good job, but are they cleaning the table with the same rag that they use on every other table? Any place like that, that's not going to happen at Classic City Eats. They actually sanitize everything. I mean, this place is immaculate. And it's also every night it is sanitized with that fog sanitation from top to bottom every night. So, and if you need one of those type of systems, Josh can hook you up. So big shout out to Classic City Eats. And we need to get the show underway so I can finish this food that's in front of me.
Yeah, I want to make a point about Josh and Amy, though. They haven't lost their touch. They've always taken good care of the old coach, but they brought me a care package over here Sunday of
well, there goes all my gloating.
And let me just tell you, definitely the place to keep coming. You can't beat it. Best chicken ever. Green beans, potato salad, banana pudding, mashed potatoes. I was eating like the Russians were in St. Louis.
Yeah, and you mentioned Nate Long, and I'll give him our best wishes. Nate is a big fan of the show and just had heart surgery, and he's been in here numerous times, and he actually sent me a note saying that he wanted to be here today, but considering he's recovering from surgery, yeah.
What you heard? Is he okay? Or did he go
he's fine.
Right?
He's doing fine. He's sending me funny text messages this morning, so Nate's doing fantastic after surgery.
That's great.
So,
that's great.
Big shout out to him.
He actually sent my wife some flowers, which is very heartfelt. Nice job by Nate.
Guys in the hospital sending flowers. He's a good guy. That's what happens when you go to Rockdale County High School. What? Just saying.
We got any
syphilis
questions?
outbreak.
We got any questions from these people
Yeah,
out there?
we got a lot of questions, Jake. You want to start launching them to us? Before
Yeah, we got a
talk
bunch.
more commercials?
I got a
we got
question
bunch
for
this
you,
week.
Jake, right now.
All right, hit me.
Tell me about Romello Brinson. What's going on with him?
Yeah, a lot of people asking about Romello Brinson, 4-star wide receiver, rivals 250 guy out of Northwestern, which is a familiar school down in Miami. James Cook played at Northwestern. You've got
Devod Wilson.
Devod Wilson was out of Northwestern,
Baker.
as well as DeAndre Baker was out of Northwestern. So a lot of ties there to the Georgia program. Brinson, a kid that, I think Georgia's been on pretty heavily, really turned things up, especially this spring. Tough with them not being able to get him on campus, more obviously with the shutdown. It looked like for a while there, Georgia was the favorite. Then Texas A&M emerged, and they felt very confident about their chances. Hey, with that James Coley connection, you always have to. And then now it seems that the tides have turned maybe back toward the home state, maybe looking at Miami as the leader right now. But I'll tell you this, the information on that kid is all over the place. I'm hearing different things from almost every different source I talk to on him. So no matter what happens, the kid is soon to commit. No matter what happens, I do think this is a situation where you could see this going a little bit longer because it looks like there is some uncertainty around what his final destination may be.
Good answer.
All right, I want to hop into some of these questions. BSW44144 over on the board at UGAsports.com. He wants to know, and I think this is a really good question. Everybody's expecting George Pickens to be wide receiver 1. Who's wide receiver 2 this year? Who's the guy who emerges as the Georgia's second threat at the wide receiver position?
It's kind of up for grabs depending on what the formation is going to be. But I certainly think like Robertson, Karis Jackson are going to be guys to reckon with their experience. You just have to hope that some of these other guys will surface and do the job. Guys like Tommy Bush. And certainly there's going to be a plethora of young guys coming in here. Arian Smith makes my mouth water with the kind of speed he brings to the table. And then certainly Burton and Rosemary and Robinson, all these guys got ability. So we'll see how they pan out. But this depends whether we're 3 wide receivers and 1 tight end or 2 tight ends and 2 wides. It just depends. I think the real ace card here, ace in the hole, is Dalvin Cook, just because I've seen Coach Monken's offense over the years when I was doing Conference USA games, and he used that Ito Smith who played for the Falcons. He used him in so many different ways out of the backfield where he would line up and shift into the slot or shift into trips. And I could see us doing that, keeping Zamir White or McIntosh back there and then shifting Cook out and making him a really dangerous guy. So we'll be okay at receiver. I really feel good about our receiver situation. And I probably left somebody out.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Dominic Blaylock off of his knee injury. I think he's going to have a great recovery, and he's
Dominic's going to be mad at me because I just didn't say anything. He's one of my favorites. I was just talking about it. I think if his injury's okay, he would be the next guy for sure.
I got your back, Coach. That's why we're a team.
He looked good in that video Georgia released yesterday of the guys returning. He was on the video. He was featured. He was walking around. Didn't appear to be
hard.
Worked hard. Up or anything. So that would be huge for Georgia.
I read this stuff that Dane and Brent Rollins put out. Between him and Pickens both, they didn't drop 1 pass last year. I mean, come on. And I never saw him drop 1 in practice, but to have that many targets towards you and you had a catchable ball and you didn't drop 1 of them, that's pretty impressive for 2 freshmen.
I do think that if we're talking about freshmen too for this year, you mentioned Roseby. Obviously, Arian Smith, I think, brings that different level with speed. But Roseby's one of those guys that I think can do everything Georgia wants in a receiver. Solid hands, great blocker, a guy who's just going to get out there and out physical guys. I think that can earn him some big playing time early on when it comes to the freshmen. But I do think Demetrius Robertson may be the guy at wide receiver too under Todd Monken. I think that's going to be a big boost to Demetrius to have that switch up at OC.
Good point. And, I think going back to my being a coach that changed where he took over players that you didn't recruit, I made some mistakes playing some guys I shouldn't have, and made some mistakes not playing some guys that I should have. And a lot of times you have preconceived notions about guys that haven't been around. And when you got a fresh coach in, like Coach Munkin coming in here, who has no idea about, anything that they can't do, they look for what they can do a lot of times. So I think that's going to help Demetrius too. And the fact that certainly Coach Hankton's done a tremendous job with him, and he had to learn how to get off press coverage and all that. But, we had so many games last year, 4 or 5 of them at least, where we had the lead and we sat on the, not necessarily sat on it, but we were not really a real stat conscious, productive offense in the second half because we're playing on a lead with a great defense. So, there weren't that many chances for guys to really sell out in the second half. And that was good percentage football by Kurt Smart. But I think more opportunities will come up for Robertson this year.
Coach, you mentioned some of the play call and some of the setups, including possibly two tight ends on the field. So we got a tight end question I want to throw to everybody here. Elvis Skinner over on the board, he says, will a certain 6 foot 13-inch tight end get legitimate playing time this year, or will he need time to develop? I don't think it's any surprise who he's talking about. Darnell Washington being the physical freak that he is. Can you see him coming in as a freshman and making some impact at that tight end position, or is this a raw kind of athlete that's going to need some time to develop?
Well, any way you look at it, he's only 18 years old, so he's a man in a young man's body. So he's going to have to develop his skills. There's no question about getting off the line of scrimmage, separating, understanding man zone principle and all that. But it's not like we have a lot of tight ends back. We lost Wolf and it was it helped us out as a transfer. And then, the kid that went to San Francisco, it was Charlie Warner. So you didn't give me a chance to stall and come in with my answer there. So, but anyhow, the fact is, I think this kid from Florida State's going to be there. Seether made a really good move in the spring, prior to spring practice, gained a lot of weight. And we'll just have to see who surfaces there at tight end. But for sure, Darnell Walker got a heck of a shot at stepping up and doing some damage. There's one other one. Who's the other tight end that's back? Fitzpatrick. And then the
McKinney.
Kid that plays baseball, Goody. I think missing spring maybe helped him because I think he might have prepped it and tried to go in the spring and he really wasn't quite ready yet. So he's probably going to be ready in the fall.
Jake, to the question there, I think it's a good idea that we're bringing in Darnell Washington into a new offense. And that's not to say that the other guys don't know it, but it gives him kind of that chance. And then the other guys, if you've been running this same offense for 2 years, they know it like the back of their hand. Maybe as they're learning, and again, it's not going to be a huge derivative. It's not going to be something completely brand new to them, but that gives Washington a chance to say, okay, I'm kind of learning these installs at the same time you guys are. So maybe it helps his chances, but I do believe he's a bit raw. I think it's a situation where, Fitzpatrick and those guys said, look, we're sitting behind Charlie Warner, we're sitting behind Wolf. Now's our chance. Trey McKitty's coming in with 3 years of experience, So there's the physical tools that get you on the field immediately, but there's also the, knowing what to do. And that offense sometimes can be a bit tricky right off the bat, knowing what your responsibilities are, especially when the defense is hiding everything and trying to fool you. So
right.
I think it should be very interesting to see what he does. But again, those physical tools, we'll get them on the field, but I just don't know how much yet until we see help. But it'd be nice to see what the offense looks like.
One of the things I would say to everybody, though, from an offensive perspective, is that you call a car. Some people call it an auto. I mean, what we're going to be doing is not that different as far for sure in the run game. There's only so many things you can do in a one-back set. You can run the inside, outside zone. You can run the stretch play with pulling the guard, or you can cross the tackle and tight end and do it. But I mean, I think the blocking schemes up front might change a little bit because Matt Luke likes to pull linemen. We might run some gap schemes, but the passing game will probably be a little more from a timing nature, more the air raid type deals. But what we call the plays will be the biggest adjustment to everybody's learning. Like instead of calling a formation trio, they might call it trips. Instead of calling a two something dual, they might call it Dixie. Instead of calling something beta, they might call it best. I mean, whatever you call it is one thing, but there's not going to be that much difference in the style. Maybe the way we call the style will be different, but it's going to be very similar to what a lot of teams in the country run.
Coach, I wanted to ask.
Not in magical plays.
Well, I want to ask you, though, you talk about differences in lingo, and I'm interested with Todd Monken coming in and being his first go here in Georgia. You got Jamie Newman for 1 year. Kind of playing off of what you just said, how much do you kind of go with what the quarterback is already comfortable with? How much do you kind of go with what a guy like that who's experienced? Yeah, good question. And I think that's what you always do is you fit your stuff to what your players can do and what they can learn and what they can adapt to. A pro coach coming in is not used to the players having a 20-hour rule where you only have so much time to meet as compared to a pro team. The players come in the morning and they stay till afternoon and they never leave the facility. They have a morning practice. They have a meeting before practice, after practice. At college, you don't have that time. But I think the fact we've had these 3 months to have an extra time to teach has certainly helped that. But one thing I know about Coach Monken, if you look over his MO over the years, he's always adapts to the personnel, and that's a sign of a good coach. You take what the guys do well and you work with it. But Jamie's going to have to prove that he can mesh with these players too. That's one thing that certainly Bennett's got an advantage on is the fact he's thrown to these receivers for a year, and Jamie just had bits and pieces of it working out on his own with him, before spring practice and now what he'll do this summer. So organized throwing won't be there till July the 13th.
Hey, Jake, before you jump to the next question, I'm gonna give a big shout out to our friends at Athens Ford. Right now, if you go into their website, you'll get the $250 off coupon. So if you just click on their website, it's going to pop up in a little box and they'll say, get $250 off any vehicle, new, used, doesn't matter. And then when you hit the put in your name and phone number, hit submit, they're going to send you the email that gets you your $250 off coupon. And then I'll tell you to use that on a 2020 Ford F-150. Right now, the crew cabs are $14,000 off, or you can finance that 2020 F-150 for 72 months at 0% APR for qualified buyers. If you want to get 2019, last year's Ford F-150, they still have, let's see, they got 14 of those left. 0% APR financing for 84 months. And again, I'm a big Ford Explorer guy. Right now, if you want to get the 2020 Ford Explorer, it is $9,500 off, or you can finance it for 72 months, 0% APR. I went out there before I went to Orange Beach and had to do some work on my Explorer. One of the trailer hitch thing put on there. Those guys do fantastic work when it comes to service. So if you need oil changed, any type of service on any vehicle, they can do it. And of course, all the vehicles you buy from our friends at Athens Ford, who are big supporters of the Georgia Bulldog program, they will all have a lifetime powertrain warranty, even their pre-owned vehicles under 80,000 miles. So big shout out to our friends at Athens Ford. They are doing great work, and they are working with people who are having some financial difficulties. They have in-house financing. Those folks are fantastic. They will work with you. And these, 6 and 7 months of 0% financing are just killer deals. So, and if you don't need that, then you'll save anywhere from $1,400 to $9,500 off a new vehicle. If you said, hey, I'll just do it over 3 years or 5 years, you can still get a hell of a deal from our friends at Athens Ford. So big shout out to them.
All right. We do have some questions about the SEC in general that I do want to get to, because I think they are good questions, especially with everybody getting fired back up. But this one from Woodsong Dog is something I know that's on a lot of people's minds. He says the quarterback room got crowded quickly. with Brock Vandegrift on the way, do you see one or more of the QBs transferring? Roddy, I know you've always got an ear to the ground when it comes to the possibility of transfers, guys looking around. Any feelers that you've got out there?
Well, I'm pretty sure Dwan Mathis is going to stick around a year at least. You know, he wants to see how it works out. This is a guy who's finally healthy. He wants to give it a shot. He, spurned Ohio State to come here and play. And we knew that coming out of last year through the bowl game, this guy was geeked up because he was finally cleared around December or so. So he was looking forward to spring practice. He's going to show everybody what he could do. And I think he still has that chip on his shoulder to say, look, I may have had the brain cyst and, had to been handled with kid gloves for a while, but he's back now. And he says, look, I can compete with JT Daniels and Brock Vandegrift and guys like that. So he wants to show what he can do, and I expect him to be fine. I don't know that Brock wants to play here, so I don't see any big changes there. The only place I could see a change coming, Carson Beck just got here. I can't see him doing anything different. And Stetson Bennett is, would he want to go somewhere else again? So I just think for a while there, you're just going to have a very, very loaded room. In other words, to your point, I'm not hearing any rumors, rumblings, and we started to hear this stuff early on when guys are like, hey, maybe I'm thinking about putting myself in the portal, or, they start, looking around. Or you hear that they're satisfied. You hear from a teammate that this kid's not happy. There have been lots of times we've been way ahead of a transfer because we knew the kid wasn't happy. Have not heard any of that yet. I think right now you have it's just like the outside linebacker group. You have outside linebacker, 5-star on top of 4-star on top of 5-star on top of top 50 player. And they're all like, look, we're going to compete like hell and see who wins out. Then we'll make a decision. So I think that's what we're seeing right now. I just think as it is, and again, you get the whole question with Todd Monken, they want to see how that's going to play out. So I think Jamie Newman wins this, but everyone else is like, look, I want my shot. So, I mean, if JT Daniels didn't think he could play here, he wouldn't transfer in. If Brock Vandegrift thought the room's too crowded, he'd decommit. Those guys, Bennett, Beck, and Dwan Mathis, they've got time to transfer if they want to, but we haven't heard any of that. So I think they all stick it around a year and fight like hell and see what they get.
Coach, how do you handle a crowded quarterback room? Only one guy can get the ball there. Certainly, what's kind of the strategy to kind of ease some of the worries that these guys might have?
Well, one of the things, you make a commitment to the player, you're going to give them every opportunity to win the job. And that's what will happen here. They'll all get their chances and they got to produce. But you can't worry about competition. If you're doing that, you shouldn't be coming to school here. So the thing that all these quarterbacks look at is supporting cast. And when they made the decision to come here, they knew they're going to have good players surrounding them, good O-linemen, good receivers, good tight ends, good running backs. So, but I think, I've been involved where quarterbacks hung in there and stayed the whole time. And I've been in one where we lost 3 in 1 year right off the bat, and then 1 in the fall left too. So decided not to play. So when Quincy came here, so it's just everybody's going to always look at what's best for them first. So they got to do that. But you guys, as far as handling it, you just say, look, we're going to be fair. Let's communicate. Let's talk about it. But we're going to base it on performance, not potential. We're going to base it on how you react and how the team reacts to you. One of the things I think is really important in developing a quarterback and having that quarterback chemistry is how the players respond to the quarterback. A lot of times he's not necessarily the best athlete or the best Tommy gun passer and all that, but he's the best for your team because how he makes that team function. And that's what you got to look at too. Who's going to play within the framework of taking care of the ball, who's going to be the guy that can make the least amount of mental mistakes. Because as I said, starting out, our defense is going to be so good that we're going to put up some points. I know that, but we're going to also play around our defense and kicking game because it'd be crazy not to.
Sure. And I
Let me get to a comment and a question out of the YouTube chat if I can, Jake. The comment, William Bruce says, Coach, good to see you back. I think we all agree.
Thank you, William.
And here's a question, and Jake, I'll throw this one at you for recruiting. Corey Foreman, what are Georgia's chances?
Well, yeah, that's the $1 million question in the 2021 class, isn't it? I get why people want to know. I mean, listen, I said the other day on Twitter, this kid's as convincing of a number one player as I've seen in my time covering this. Completely dominant when it comes to the pass rush. And that's where the game's moving, is you got to have guys like that. As far as Georgia's chances, I do think Georgia's really in the hunt on this. Now, what has to happen in order for me to feel that there's a legitimate shot moving forward is you got to get Mason Smith on campus, because Corey's been on campus.
Oh, that's easy.
Well, yeah. Yeah, all you got to do is get him away from, 45 minutes away from LSU. I'm sure they'll be happy to send him over this way. But I think that it's a situation where Foreman is really in play for Georgia. Everything I've heard suggests that. Everybody I've talked to suggests that. I think that what you have on your side is a little bit of the element of the unknown. And if Georgia is already in this strong a standing with that pair, how far can they boost themselves with a good visit moving forward when things open back up? I think that'll be interesting to see. So definitely got to get these guys back on campus, but I'm not writing Georgia off by any means. I do think that I'm still leaning a little bit toward USC being the landing spot for Foreman, because initially when he decommitted, it was because he felt Clemson was far away from home. But if he's reworking those notions, I think Georgia is going to be fighting tooth and nail with LSU for those two guys.
Here's one point I would make on Corey Foreman, and I think it's pretty much true with anybody on the West Coast. I like Clay Helton. I think he's a good football coach. I knew his dad when he was a coach in Miami and coached in the pros. I mean, he's done some good things. He's had some injuries out there, but things are up in the air whether he's going to be the coach there next year in any way you look at it. They brought in a new AD from Cincinnati and a new president from North Carolina. So a lot of change in the air out there at USC. So, but they are having a good recruiting year. There's no question about it. But the thing that I would point out is we got Milton last year, which was huge for a kid to leave the West Coast. Now we got JT Daniels coming in here from USC. So that gets everybody's attention pretty quick on the West Coast. And we got Brock Bowers, who's looking at as really strong as a tight end. So it's easier for Georgia to sell Foreman from a standpoint, hey, if these guys are looking at it, why aren't you too? And he doesn't mind coming east because he's already committed to Clemson. And, Coach Sweeney has the deal, if you're going to make visits, then you got to decommit. So he wanted to make some visits, which that's fine. He might still go to Clemson, but I think getting those two guys and maybe Bowers will really help us with this kid. And I think the guys we got coming from Louisiana and in our program right now will help us with Mason too, because Van Pran's here. One of the things that sticks out in my mind, I saw him last summer when he was here along with Mims and some of those other kids. And I'm telling you, that guy looks like a pro football player on the hoof as far as what you're looking for. And, he'd be a good guy to host Smith when he comes in for a visit. And these guys talk about wanting to go to the same school. That'd be great if they do, but push comes to shove. If one of them wants to go one place and the other one doesn't agree, he's not going there because of that guy. But if they both like the same school, then that'll happen.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this: if you're able to land both of those guys, whoever does it, you've boosted your chances at a national championship significantly from the get-go. I really do believe that. I think those are impact freshmen, and those are guys who can give you 3 years. And listen, you're going to have to play them as freshmen because you're not getting them for longer than 3 years.
One thing I would guarantee you about those two guys: if they go to the same school, I will guarantee you this. One of you say what?
What?
The other team will run to the other side. They're not going to run towards those two guys.
No, Mason's a monster. You talked about Cedric Van Pran. I saw him in February when I went to New Orleans to cover the Rivals camps down there, and covered 7-on-7. Cedric was there. He had a mild injury. He was on one crutch. He's fine now. But Cedric, again, was in fantastic shape. And when you get around Mason Smith and you watch that kid move, I just think that I don't know how well they know each other, but from a personality standpoint, they're both very interesting guys. They're both very cerebral, very funny. They see past all the recruiting hullabaloo. So to me, I think Coach makes a good point. If you bring Mason Smith in here and you pair him up with Cedric Van Pran, those two guys will make a hell of a team, you know. And if those guys are banging on each other in practices years going forward, you're going to have one. You're going to win the trenches, you know. And to add Corey Foreman to it, holy crap! So that'd be.
Here's another point I want to make about recruiting, and you know, we've talked about it, and Jake's talked about it, and Dane has done a good job with these podcasts with and these things he's done evaluating our players. But the one thing that Kirby has, to me, over anybody is how much he relishes recruiting. And everybody relishes it to a certain extent. But let's just say that somebody, a head coach for some other school, is not that into interpersonal relationships, and he's just the closer. He goes in. And so the difference now is all these Zoom meetings and all these FaceTime and all these things that these kids have been doing with these coaches has been, and every time I read about an article from Jake, they're talking about, I've had 7 or 8 coaches talk to me today and all that, this is not the norm. We've never been involved with that for 3 months for this much. But the one thing that you know, without question, is every day Kirby Smart is wearing that Zoom out compared to every other head coach. And I promise you, those kids know everything about Kirby, but his blood type. So I think
they may know that.
All these good kids around the country, we might not get as many, we might not get all of them, but the relationship he's built up over the last 3 months, coupled with the fact he had so many of them come in here beforehand. You know, we had all those juniors the whole month of February and January. We had those junior days. They were stacked in here. I just think that this recruiting class right now, and I'm not going out on a limb here, and I'm not delirious, and I'm just telling you, our recruiting class is going to be, wow. It's going to be unbelievable.
I mean,
thank you for
clarifying.
Right? You're not delirious.
You say that like Georgia can't pull kids from Louisiana. That tends to be a thing that is said. You get Cedric Van Pran, you get your Burns. Then you look at, you can't go in Alabama's backyard and take guys, George Pickens and Clay Webb. So, I mean, that's phenomenal.
You can't get them out of Miami either, apparently.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
I just say that's a good point.
Well,
and now Georgia can't recruit in state.
I'm not disrespecting some of these other head coaches. I don't mean to, because I'm sure that they had to learn how to do all this stuff like everybody else. But I just feel like if everybody on our board knows the way Kirby works these kids when you weren't doing this, just a normal thing, the way he would call them and all that. But can you imagine that he's got 12, 14 hours a day that all he has to do is recruit? Come on. I guarantee you he wasn't recruiting 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day. How many hours they were doing it, he was doing it. Now, he relaxed sometimes, that maybe took a half hour off, but I promise you, he was on them.
Hey, Jake, before you get to those final questions, we'll do those rapid fire. I want to give a big shout out to our friends at Aaron Overhead Doors. Big sponsors of our show, big sponsors of the website. And they're really kind of they've redone their website to point out how much commercial work they do. So if you need a commercial door installed, they can do it. If you need a commercial door repaired, they can do it. You need dock equipment repaired and installed. So when you're trying to your docking equipment, when you're bringing in the big commercials, you have the door on the back of your building, your facility. You need that fixed, and you need the docking gear and stuff like that. They can do it. Heck, they're also doing industrial fans now. I didn't know that. So Ryan Lucia and the folks at Aaron Overhead Doors, AARON, they will take care of all your residential needs if you need them. They'll take care of all your commercial needs if you need them. I'm going to have them go out, put a new rubber gasket on the bottom of one of the garage doors in my aunt's house because it got some water coming in. You got water coming in, they'll fix that. They know how to do it. You trust me, you can't go to Lowe's and get the gasket that you need to fix this thing. You're going to have water coming in your house forever until you call air and overhead doors, they'll take care of it. If you have a car with those little buttons in the visor that's supposed to open your garage door, like you're still carrying around the garage door holder because you haven't figured out how to connect the two, call them, they'll come out and do it. And again, the neat thing is you can contact them for free. They will give you a free estimate. They're going to come out to your house. They're not going to come in and cough Corona all over you. They're going to come in with the masks, or they'll stay outside and look at it. Contact. In other words, they are going to take care of you and not get you ill. Unlike some of the horror stories I've heard about other contractors out there, these are employees of Air and Overhead Doors, and they will do a great job. So big shout out to them. And Jake, I'm going to need you to say this for me because apparently our friends at Your Pie have brought back the peach and meat dish, the prosciutto, the peach and prosciutto pie at Your Pie is back. It's a summer pie, has won a lot of awards, has won a lot of hearts. And if you don't have the Your Pie app, for the love of Pete, go get it. It's very simple. You have room on your phone, download it. And here's the thing, it's one of the quickest ways to order Your Pie because you can do all the customization stuff. You don't have to stand there and say, well, I want more of this and less of that and put this on there. You can hit it. It's all so perfectly designed. When you just go, I want this, extra this, and send it to them. They just drive over there and pick it up. If you do 2 orders before the end of the month, before June 30th, they're going to add 20 points to your Pie. There you go. Oh, 24 points. Now, if you do 2 more of those 2 orders before the end of the month, they're going to add 20 points. So you get the points for your food, for everything you order, plus an additional 20 points just for using the app. They're trying to give you free pizza. Okay, this is not complicated. So just use their freaking app, and you'll be quite happy because it's one of the most. A lot of people, the apps are like, okay, well, if you buy 100 things from us, we'll give you 10% off. That's not how the Your Pie app works. It's almost like people that use the Kroger thing to get gas, and they get great deals on gas. This is in that caliber. You need to be using the Your Pie app because it's the quickest way to order pizza, and just walk in, or hell, you don't have to walk in, just drive by. They will bring it out to your car.
Get that peach and prosciutto pie. I'm telling you, man. I had it last week. Dude. I had 2. I bought 2 actually. And
I remember they brought one by the place here, and I'm like, I was kind of suspicious. So I'm like, I don't know about that. Then we ate it. And I was like, this is fantastic.
No, that's the perfect sweet and salty.
Yeah.
All right. Couple rapid fires here to wrap things up. Talking about some other teams out there. Old Fourth Dog, he guilted me on this one. He said, if you ask my question, you'll set a world record for my questions on a podcast since they've never been used before. So shout out to you, Old Fourth Dog. This one's for you. He says, do you feel Florida is the toughest test in the East this year, or will Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina, or Missouri be a bigger challenge? Any gut feelings on that one, anybody?
Toughest in the East. My thought is Tennessee is going to be loaded with that offensive line. That is going to be a problem. That's going to be one of the best in the nation. So pretty talented there. Great coaching staff. Jeremy Pruitt has surrounded himself with some guys that know what the hell they're doing. So that's going to be a tough test. I don't know that Florida's going to be ranked very highly. And, of course, Georgia always plays oddly in Jacksonville Stadium. So I don't know. I think that's going to be 2 tests. I think we're kind of getting back to where I'm not saying Tennessee is back or Florida is back to the caliber where they have been in historically, but this ain't the Tennessee team of 5 years ago or 7 years ago. This is going to be a pretty good Tennessee team. So I think right now Tennessee might be the number 2 team in these. I don't know. I need to sit down with that. We're going to have a great series. Anthony Dasher, he's going to go on vacation next week, but he is already working ahead. And each day we will have a scouting report of all the teams that Georgia's going to face this year. It's one of the best series we do all year long because we get the experts from other teams to tell us about their squad that they cover. And read the Florida write-up from our friend Corey down in Florida. Read what we get from Tennessee, our friends up there. And that will help you decide who's going to be the best team, second best team in the East. Because right now I've got to pencil Georgia in number 1. But they're going to have a hard test. Coach, your thoughts on the second best team in the SEC?
Yeah, I think it's just going to be up for grabs. Everybody talking about Florida, but Kirby's got an unbelievable record against the Coach Mullen. I think Mullen's like 1-10 or 1-11 against Kirby. Lost the last 10 or 11 straight. He won the first one, but I don't know if Kirby's in his head or what, but certainly our defense has done a good job against them. And their talent base. It's all going to be based on their offensive line. Can their offensive line be better for them? They got some backs coming in. They got some good receivers. As you mentioned, Tennessee, to me, the way they've certainly recruited well. This year's class may be not quite as good as everybody says because it's all based on numbers at this point. But the one thing we know, Pruitt knows our system. He's trained just like Kirby did under Coach Saban, and he's got a good staff. But I don't know if they're ready to challenge us like maybe everybody's talking about. But the real threat to us, to me, is Alabama and Auburn on the schedule. Certainly, Florida's always going to be a test, but we're 12-0 against the Eastern teams except for South Carolina, I think so. And that was a nightmare game, but South Carolina will be better. But I'd say Tennessee and Florida both are threats, but we got Tennessee at home and Florida down at Jacksonville.
I worry about South Carolina if I'm looking at the schedule, if I'm Georgia, just because I think that there's a lot of motivation for that team to play. I mean, everybody kind of probably knows what's on the line with Muschamp this year. It's a win now mode for them. And I think the big thing that South Carolina's got going for them ahead of most other programs is they've got one of the deepest D-line rooms in the conference. They've got some outstanding players up front between Zach Pickens, Rick Sandage. They've done a great job of adding to that defensive line, and I think that can be really beneficial for them. I'm not saying that they're going to sneak up on Georgia again, but I do expect the Gamecocks to have a better season than they did last year.
That's well noted. They've definitely got some players.
That's the important point, though, Jake, is that there's a cluster that could be fighting for that second in the East, where it could be Florida, Tennessee, South Carolina, even Kentucky, because Mark Stoops has done a great job of getting the most out of his players there. But that gap between 1 and 2 in the East is just getting wider and wider every season.
All right, we got this one. Let's wrap up on this one. I think this is a good one. Another conference question to wrap up on. And Coach, you were talking about Alabama and Auburn. JR Star 86 on the board says, how do you see the West shaking out this year? Both Bama and LSU lost a lot of players to the league. Jimbo and Gus are in win now mode, and you got new wild cards in the additions of Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin. Seems like the most open the division has been in several years. Do you agree that this is the most open the West has been in a while, Coach?
I think the main thing for Alabama is can their defense get back to where it needs to be. Limited on defense as far as giving up a lot of points, a lot of easy plays. They're going to have to stop that to have any chance, because I don't think they can outscore people like they did with Tua in there. I think Mac Jones will be a serviceable quarterback. I liked what he did when he had his shot. I think he's more than serviceable. He's a good quarterback, and they got Harris and all those receivers and big linemen coming back. But LSU lost way too many players to be as good as they were, plus the Heisman Trophy winner in the first-round draft. A&M, to me, it's got a chance with Mon, but still they don't have as many players as they need when you look at their talent level. Auburn up in the air on their defense after losing as many good players. Bo Nix is okay at quarterback. He's got to make that step against the better teams. But as the guy J.R. Starr mentioned, I mean, it's probably more wide open than it's been. But I feel like Alabama's probably got to be the favorite going in just because of their offense. And Leach is going to help, but he didn't have spring practice. He's got a transfer quarterback in Costello, and certainly Coach Lane Kiffin will do a good job at Ole Miss, but they still don't have the talent that the other teams. And Sam Pittman and those guys just got so far to go. He'll do all he can, but they got a long way to go.
Roddy, predictions on the West?
Here come the Aggies. I'm just saying it's they've been recruited well. I mean, and I hate to be the guy that just leans on recruiting rankings, but we've done so many stories and so many analysis pieces that have shown where you recruit is where you wind up in the rankings. They've recruited well. They got Jimbo Fisher out there. I've seen big jumps each year. I think
got an easy schedule too, Rodney. Easy schedule compared to what they did.
Right. I just think that the kids are believing. He's cut some people. He's added some good coaches. He's added some good players. I just think I definitely see a situation where, we're kind of thinking, it's for years it was Auburn and Alabama. There's Auburn, Alabama, and LSU. LSU loses a lot. Alabama's got some questions. Auburn could come back stronger this year. Hell, there's one point midseason where like, oh man, Gus has got it. Well, then Gus finished kind of strong. So, but I think that Texas A&M, that crazy amount of money they threw at Jimbo Fisher looks like it's going to pay off, because I think the Aggies are coming.
I will say this, and this is why you listen to UGA Sports. I talked to a pro scout that went to back in the fall that visited A&M and had been to A&M and just had gone to a couple other schools. And I said, how are they looking? And he said, I can tell you this, they don't look like Georgia or LSU or Alabama right now on the hoof. So that was last fall. So we'll see.
Well, I do this series with Brent Rollins where we look at PFF grades from last year, and we're going to start looking at opponents after we just wrapped up Georgia's returning players based on PFF grades. Georgia has 5 players graded 80. So does Alabama. I think that's your answer. I think it's Bama in the West, unless something crazy happens in the Iron Bowl, which it does pretty much every year. So whatever that turns out to be, that's going to be Bama or Auburn.
This is what the process was built for. It's what Nick Saban has in position for. There's never we lost too many guys, down year excuse for those guys. I think with that's beneficial to Alabama. I certainly consider them the front runner in the East, or in the West. I'm sorry, but LSU going to give them a hard time. And like you said, some really interesting pieces there as well for Auburn.
Yeah, I just think when you look at how LSU captured lightning in a bottle last year, and to lose all those players,
and coaches.
Ed Ogeron was considered, like he walked on water in that town. But if they lose 2 or 3 games this year, people aren't going to care that he lost all that stuff. They're going to lose their damn mind. So it'll be, I think, to me, the most interesting storyline will be what happens at LSU. I'm with you guys. I believe Alabama's Alabama. But when you talk about the question has the West more open? It used to be a 2-team race. Well, for the longest time, it was a 1-team race. Then it was 2-team race, and it was 3. Now I think it's 4. So with that, unless anybody else has
Roddy,
something.
one more thing real fast, because I mentioned the Iron Bowl. Just sending love to Pat Dye and his family. Georgia, great player, obviously,
and
great head coach at Auburn. And Coach Majors at Tennessee.
Majors.
It's been just sending love to their families and people that love them.
Absolutely. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for this week's show. I want to give a big shout out to our friends here at Classic City Eats. I'm going to jump in on this food that none of you guys get. First time I've been able to have something untouched and unmolested by Jake and Coach Donnan. I will enjoy it. Big shout out to our friends at Athens Ford, Arid Overhead Doors, Your Pie, and Academia Brewing Company. And, of course, our friends at 365 Game Day. If you've been watching the show on that, we appreciate it. And our friends at 11 Alive. We've been having great coverage. Tune in next Tuesday at noon, and we will try to do this again. Hopefully we'll